The cold wind howled through the empty streets as a German shepherd sat alone on the cracked sidewalk. His fur was matted, his ribs visible under his skin, but his eyes, still sharp and alert, never left the spot where his family's car had vanished 10 years ago. Every day he returned to this exact place, sniffing the air, ears perking up at every passing vehicle. The locals knew him. Some tossed him scraps. Others whispered, "That dog's still waiting." One evening, as the streetlights flickered to life, a little girl stopped in front of him. "Why's he always here, Mama?" she asked. The mother sighed. "They left him, sweetheart, long ago." The dog's ears twitched at the words. He didn't understand them, but the pain in the woman's voice made his tail droop. He lowered his head onto his paws, staring at the spot where his world had ended, and where somehow he still believed it would begin again. Then a car slowed down near the curb. The dog's head snapped up. The engine sounded familiar. His heart pounded. Could it be? The car door creaked open, and the German shepherd's entire body trembled. His nose twitched, catching a scent buried deep in his memory. Vanilla and motor oil. The same smell that used to cling to his owner's jacket. A man stepped out, but his face was hidden under the shadow of a hood. The dog's tail thumped weakly against the pavement, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. He let out a low whine, pushing himself up on shaky legs. Was it really them? After all this time? But then the man turned, and the dog's ears flattened. It wasn't his owner. Just a stranger with a similar scent. The disappointment hit him like a physical blow, and he slumped back down, his chin resting on the cold concrete. The man hesitated, watching the dog with an unreadable expression. "You still waiting, boy?" he muttered, more to himself than the animal. The dog didn't respond, but his eyes never left the street, as if expecting another car to appear any second. The little girl from earlier tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, we should take him home," she pleaded. The mother shook her head. "We can't, sweetheart. He's waiting for someone else." The girl frowned but didn't argue. Instead, she crouched down and gently placed a small meat pie next to the dog. He sniffed it but didn't eat. His appetite had died years ago, along with his joy. Night fell, and the street emptied. The dog remained, his ears pricking at every distant engine. Then a new sound cut through the silence, a soft whimper. He lifted his head, scanning the darkness. A small, scruffy puppy limped into the dim glow of a streetlight, its fur dirty and its ribs showing. It stared at the German shepherd with wide, desperate eyes. The older dog hesitated. He hadn't interacted with another animal in years, but something about the puppy's helplessness stirred an old instinct inside him. With a grunt, he stood and nudged the meat pie toward the puppy. The little creature devoured it in seconds, then looked up, tail wagging tentatively. The German shepherd sighed and lay back down, allowing the puppy to curl up against his side. For the first time in a decade, he wasn't completely alone, but just as the two dogs settled, a pair of headlights turned onto the street. The German shepherd's head shot up. This time, the engine didn't just sound familiar, it was familiar. The exact same sputtering noise his owner's car used to make. His heart raced. The puppy, sensing his tension, whimpered and pressed closer. The car slowed, then stopped right in front of them. The door opened. A pair of worn-out boots hit the pavement, and the German shepherd's breath caught in his chest. The scent hit him first, that unmistakable mix of old leather and faint cigarette smoke that had haunted his memories for a decade. His tail began thumping uncontrollably against the concrete, his entire body trembling with anticipation. The figure stepped into the dim streetlight, and the dog's vision blurred with tears of recognition. It was him, older now, with streaks of gray in his beard and deeper lines around his eyes, but undeniably the man who had raised him from a puppy. The man froze when he saw the dog, his face draining of color. "Rex?" he whispered, the name cracking in his throat. The puppy beside Rex whined nervously, sensing the overwhelming emotions crashing through the older dog. Rex wanted to leap forward, to cover his owner in kisses like he used to, but his legs refused to move. A storm of emotions raged inside him: joy, confusion, betrayal. Why had they left? Where had they been all these years? The man took a hesitant step forward, his hand outstretched. "It's really you," he breathed, tears streaming down his weathered face. "After all this time, you're still here?" Just as Rex was about to overcome his paralysis and move toward his long-lost human, a woman's voice called from the car. "Mike, what's taking so long?" The passenger door opened, and a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, jumped out. "Dad, what's wrong?" The boy's eyes widened when he saw Rex. "Whoa, a big dog." He started forward eagerly, but Mike threw out an arm to stop him. "Wait, son, be careful." The caution in his voice made Rex's ears flatten. That tone, it was the same one Mike had used when Rex was a puppy and chewed on electrical cords. Protective, worried. The boy ignored his father's warning and knelt in front of Rex. "He's so skinny," the boy murmured, his small hands hovering just inches from Rex's muzzle. The puppy, emboldened by the boy's approach, wiggled forward and licked the child's fingers. The boy laughed, and the sound sent a jolt through Rex's heart. It was the same laugh Mike used to have when Rex would do something silly as a pup. Mike finally crouched down beside his son, his eyes never leaving Rex's face. This was my dog," he said softly, "from before you were born." The boy's eyes grew round with wonder. "Really? But why's he out here?" Mike swallowed hard, his atoms, apple bobbing painfully. We had to move suddenly, couldn't take him with us." The lie tasted bitter in the air. Rex whined softly, his tail going still. He remembered that day with perfect clarity, the hurried packing, the way Mike had avoided looking at him, the way the car had sped away without a backward glance. A car horn blared down the street, making everyone jump. Mike stood abruptly. "We should go," he said, his voice suddenly tight. "Your mom's waiting." The boy protested. "But Dad, we can't leave him again." Mike hesitated, his eyes darting between Rex and his family's car. Rex saw the moment the decision was made, the slight hardening of Mike's jaw, the way his shoulders squared. "He's not ours anymore, son," Mike said firmly. "Someone else probably takes care of him now." The boy looked heartbroken, but obediently stood up. As Mike guided his son back to the car, he paused and turned back to Rex. For a brief moment their eyes locked, a decade of unspoken words passing between them. Then Mike reached into his wallet and pulled out several bills, tucking them under a rock near where Rex lay. "Take care, old friend," he murmured before quickly walking away. The car door slammed. The engine started. Rex watched numbly as the taillights disappeared around the corner, just like they had 10 years ago. The puppy nuzzled against him, sensing his distress. The money under the rock fluttered in the breeze, enough to feed them for weeks. But to Rex, it might as well have been ashes. Then, from the shadows of the alleyway, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. Then another, and another. A pack of street dogs emerged, their gaunt bodies moving with predatory grace. The alpha, a scarred mastiff mix, locked eyes with Rex. The message was clear. This was their territory now, and the two newcomers weren't welcome. The puppy pressed itself against Rex's side, trembling. Rex felt his old instincts kick in. He might have lost his family again, but he'd be damned if he'd lose this little one too. With a deep growl that started in his chest, Rex bared his teeth and rose to face the approaching threat. The pack leader lunged first, yellowed teeth flashing in the dim streetlight. Rex reacted on pure instinct, throwing his body sideways to shield the trembling puppy while snapping at the attacking dog's exposed flank. A chorus of snarls erupted as the rest of the pack circled them, their matted fur standing on end. Rex's muscles screamed in protest. He was old now, malnourished. Nothing like the powerful protector he'd been in his prime. But when the mastiff's jaws closed around his hind leg, a surge of adrenaline burned through his veins like wildfire. With a roar that startled even himself, Rex twisted and clamped down hard on the attacker's ear, tasting blood as he ripped through flesh. The mastiff yelped and retreated, shaking its head violently. In that moment of hesitation, a rock came sailing through the air from somewhere behind Rex, striking the pavement near the pack with a sharp crack. "Get out of here! Shoo!" The little girl from earlier stood at the mouth of the alley, her mother hovering nervously behind her, already pulling out her phone to call for help. The pack scattered temporarily, disappearing into the shadows, but Rex knew they'd be back. The girl rushed forward, tears streaming down her cheeks as she saw the blood dripping from Rex's leg. "Mama, we have to help them." Her mother hesitated only a second before nodding, quickly shrugging out of her light jacket to fashion a makeshift stretcher. As they carefully lifted Rex onto the fabric, his vision swam with pain and exhaustion. The last thing he saw before passing out was the puppy limping along beside them, its tiny body pressed close to the little girl's legs. When he awoke, the sterile scent of antiseptic filled his nose. Bright lights overhead made him blink rapidly. He tried to stand, but found his hind leg wrapped in thick bandages. The pain now a dull throb beneath what smelled like medicinal ointment. A kind-faced woman in a white coat smiled down at him. "There's our brave boy," she murmured, scratching gently behind his ears. "You gave us quite a scare." The door opened and the little girl burst in, her face lighting up when she saw Rex was awake. "You're okay," she cried, throwing her arms around his neck with the fearless abandon only children possess. Behind her, the mother spoke quietly with the vet. "We'd like to adopt them both, if that's possible." The vet's expression turned serious. "The older one has a microchip." Rex's ears perked up at this. He remembered the sharp pinch of the needle all those years ago when Mike had taken him to be chipped. The mother paled. "Oh no, does that mean?" The vet nodded. "Legally, we have to contact the registered owner." Rex's heart pounded as the vet picked up the phone. He didn't understand all the words, but he caught the name Michael Reynolds and the numbers the vet recited. Mike's old phone number from a lifetime ago. The call connected. A familiar voice answered. There was a long pause as the vet explained the situation. Then Mike's voice came through clearly. Yeah, that's my dog. But I surrendered ownership years ago. Do whatever you want with it." The click of the call ending echoed in the sudden silence of the room. The little girl, sensing the tension, hugged Rex tighter. "Does that mean we can keep him?" The vet exchanged a look with the mother before nodding slowly. "It appears so." The joy in the room should have been contagious, but Rex felt hollow. That final rejection, delivered so casually, had severed the last fragile thread of hope he'd clung to for 10 long years. The puppy, now cleaned up and sporting its own small bandage on one paw, climbed into Rex's lap and licked his muzzle. The little girl giggled. "Look, he's kissing away your sadness." And as Rex looked down at the scruffy little creature who had somehow become his responsibility, he felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not the desperate, aching love he'd carried for Mike all these years, but something quieter, something new. The vet smiled as she watched them. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "that puppy looks just like you did in your records photo. When you were young." The mother gasped. "You don't think—" The vet nodded. "It's possible. Strays often have multiple litters in the area they were born." Rex studied the puppy more closely. The shape of the ears, that one white toe on the front left paw. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together with startling clarity. This wasn't just some random stray, this was family. His family. The realization hit him like a physical blow. All this time he'd been waiting for the past to return to him, while the future had literally curled up at his side. Just as this revelation settled over him, the clinic door burst open. A panting animal control officer rushed in, his face grim. "We've got a serious problem," he said urgently. "That pack from the docks? They've gone completely feral. Just attacked a delivery driver 2 blocks from here. They're heading this way, and they're out for blood, especially against the dogs that got away." He nodded meaningfully at Rex and the puppy. The vet's face went pale. "The docks? Where this one was found waiting all those years?" The officer nodded. "Same pack that's been terrorizing that neighborhood for a decade. And from what witnesses say, they've got a particular grudge against this big guy here." Rex felt the puppy tremble against him. The little girl clutched his fur protectively. Outside, the distant sound of snarling and barking grew louder. The pack was coming, and this time they wouldn't back down so easily. The clinic erupted into controlled chaos as the vet and animal control officer hurried to secure the building. Metal shutters clanged down over the windows, while the little girl's mother scooped up both dogs, rushing them into a back examination room. Rex's body tensed as the first thunderous impact shook the clinic's front door. The pack was here, and they weren't waiting. The puppy whimpered, pressing its entire body against Rex's side as the snarling outside grew louder. The little girl, instead of showing fear, gently stroked both dogs' heads. "Don't worry," she whispered. "My dad's a police officer. He's coming with help." Through the gaps in the shutters, Rex saw shadows moving. 5, maybe 6 large dogs circling like sharks. The lead mastiff had fresh blood matted in its fur, and its eyes glowed with a madness Rex recognized. This wasn't just about territory anymore. This was personal. The vet whispered urgently to the animal control officer, "We need to sedate them, but we're out of tranquilizers after the livestock call yesterday." The officer gripped his catchpole tighter. "Then we do this the hard way." Just as another crash shook the door, a new sound cut through the night, the wail of police sirens. The pack hesitated, ears flicking toward the noise. Then, with a final snarl at the clinic, the mastiff turned and bolted, its pack following close behind. The little girl cheered, but Rex remained tense. He'd seen that look in the mastiff's eyes before. This wasn't over. The next hour passed in a blur of police reports and paperwork. The little girl's father arrived, his uniform crisp and authoritative as he took statements. When he knelt to examine Rex's injuries, something about his scent made Rex's tail thump weakly. A faint trace of gun oil and peppermint that reminded him of Mike before the drinking started. The officer studied Rex's face intently, then suddenly froze. "Wait, this can't be the same dog." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old photos. 10 years ago, my first week on patrol, I responded to a domestic disturbance call at the docks. There was a German shepherd chained outside. The mother gasped. "That's why he waited there all this time." The officer nodded grimly. "The owner was drunk, violent. When we arrested him, he screamed that if he couldn't have his dog, no one could. told us he'd thrown the chain key into the river. Rex shuddered, the memory flooding back. The tight collar cutting into his neck, the fading taillights, the slow realization that no one was coming back. The officer continued. We tried for hours to cut the chain, but our tools weren't strong enough. By the time animal control arrived with bolt cutters, he trailed off, looking at Rex with newfound respect. You chewed through that chain, didn't you, boy? The revelation hung heavy in the room. The little girl hugged Rex fiercely. You're a hero. But the officer's face darkened. That pack, they're the descendants of the guard dogs from the old shipping yard, the ones that used to attack you when you were chained up. Rex's breath quickened as fragmented memories surfaced. The nightly attacks, the scars that never fully healed, the desperate fight for survival that had shaped his entire existence. The vet, who had been quietly examining the puppy, suddenly inhaled sharply. This changes everything, she murmured, turning the puppy over to reveal a distinctive scar pattern on its belly. These marks, they're from a chain, not a fight. She met Rex's eyes. This isn't just your descendant. This is your littermate's pup, your nephew. The room spun around Rex. All this time he'd been protecting family without even knowing it. Outside, a new sound cut through the night. Not sirens this time, but the guttural roar of a motorcycle pulling up to the clinic. The door burst open, revealing a leather-clad figure with a familiar scent that made Rex's entire body go rigid. Mike stood in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. I lied earlier, he blurted out, his voice rough with emotion. I couldn't stop thinking about that call. His eyes locked onto Rex. I need to explain what really happened that day. But before Mike could take another step, a chorus of snarls erupted from the alleyway. The pack had returned, and this time they weren't alone. Behind them, silhouetted against the streetlights, stood three massive figures that made even the mastiff look small. The original guard dogs from the shipping yard, their faces twisted with scars, their eyes burning with decades of hatred. The leader, a monstrous Rottweiler mix missing one ear, fixed its gaze directly on Rex. This wasn't just a territorial dispute anymore. This was a reckoning 10 years in the making. The clinic's fluorescent lights flickered as the massive Rottweiler took a step forward, its yellowed teeth glistening under the harsh glow. Rex instinctively positioned himself between the threat and the puppy, his bandaged leg trembling but holding firm. Mike remained frozen in the doorway, his face a mask of shock and guilt. "Brutus," he whispered, recognizing the scarred dog immediately. The Rottweiler's head snapped toward Mike, a deep growl rumbling in its chest. The animal control officer slowly reached for his tranquilizer gun, but the little girl's father stopped him with a sharp gesture. "Too many civilians. We need to evacuate first." A tense silence fell as the two groups sized each other up. The clinic staff and police on one side, the feral pack on the other, with Rex and Mike caught in between. Then, with a suddenness that made everyone jump, the puppy darted out from behind Rex and barked defiantly at the massive Rottweiler. The little girl screamed as Brutus lunged, but Rex moved faster, intercepting the attack mid-air. The two adult dogs crashed to the ground in a whirl of teeth and fur. The clinic erupted into chaos as the rest of the pack surged forward. Mike suddenly sprang into action, grabbing a metal stool and swinging it at the advancing dogs. "Get everyone out the back!" he yelled. The vet herded the little girl and her mother toward the emergency exit while the officers formed a protective line. Rex and Brutus rolled across the floor, each trying to gain the upper hand. Through the haze of pain and adrenaline, Rex noticed something strange. Brutus wasn't fighting to kill. His attacks were measured, almost ritualistic. The Rottweiler broke away for a second, panting heavily. "You left us," he snarled in the way dogs communicate. "You ran, and they took it out on us." The truth hit Rex like a physical blow. The shipping yard guard dogs hadn't been his enemies. They'd been prisoners just like him. When he escaped, the cruel humans had punished the others. Mike, seeming to sense the shift in energy, dropped the stool and did something unimaginable. He stepped between the fighting dogs, his hands raised. "Stop! Please!" Brutus hesitated, confusion flashing in his eyes. Humans never intervened in dog battles. The little girl broke free from her mother and ran to Rex's side, throwing her small arms around his neck. "Don't hurt my dog," she sobbed. The raw innocence in her voice made even the wildest pack members pause. In that moment of stillness, the vet made a startling discovery. "This Rottweiler, he's microchipped too." She scanned him quickly, then gasped. Registered to the same shipping company that owned the property where Rex was chained. Mike sank to his knees, his voice breaking. "I tried to come back for you, Rex, that night after my arrest, but they'd already sold the property. The new owners said all the dogs were put down." Brutus growled low in his throat. "They lied. They kept us for fighting." The pieces were falling into place, the years of abuse, the carefully cultivated hatred, the pack's relentless pursuit. These dogs weren't born monsters. They'd been made into monsters. Just as the tension seemed to ease, a new danger emerged. Outside, the wail of additional police sirens approached, along with the distinct sound of animal control trucks. The pack members shifted nervously. They knew what those sounds meant. Brutus locked eyes with Rex. "We can't go back to cages," he communicated urgently. Mike, somehow understanding the unspoken plea, made a split-second decision. "There's an old drainage tunnel behind the clinic," he said quickly. "It leads to the riverbank. Go now, before they surround the building." The vet started to protest, but the little girl's father nodded grimly. "Let them go. They've suffered enough." Brutus gave Rex one last lingering look before signaling to his pack. As they slipped out the back, the Rottweiler paused. "The small brown one at the docks, she remembers you," he said cryptically before disappearing into the night. The puppy whimpered, pressing close to Rex. Mike reached out a trembling hand. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, old friend, but I'd like to explain." Before he could continue, the vet interrupted. "We have bigger problems. Look at this." She held up an X-ray of the puppy. "See these metal fragments in his leg? And this scar pattern? This pup was deliberately chained just like you were, Rex, recently." The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone was still out there, recreating the same cruelty Rex had endured. And if the puppy had escaped, there might be others still trapped. The little girl looked up at her parents with determination. "We have to save them." Outside, the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. Rex knew with sudden clarity that his long vigil was finally over. Not because he'd gotten the reunion he dreamed of, but because he'd found something more important to fight for. The morning sun cast long shadows across the clinic floor as Rex limped to the window, watching the animal control vehicles pull away empty-handed. His body ached from the fight, but his mind raced with Brutus's final words. The small brown one at the docks. "She remembers you." The image of a timid brown spaniel mix flashed in his memory. One of the few kind faces during his chained years, who would sometimes sneak him scraps when the humans weren't looking. If she was still alive after all this time. Mike knelt beside Rex, his hands shaking as he attached a new leash. "I know you've got no reason to trust me," he murmured, avoiding everyone's eyes. "But I know those docks better than anyone. Let me help." The little girl, Lily, Rex now knew her name was, clutched her father's sleeve. Daddy, we have to go with them. What if there's more puppies hurt? The police officer exchanged a long look with the vet before sighing. All right, but we do this by the book. Surveillance first, then call for backup if we find evidence. The drive to the industrial docks was tense and quiet. Rex sat stiffly in the back of the police SUV, the puppy curled anxiously at his feet. Mike kept glancing at Rex in the rearview mirror, his expression haunted. I never wanted to leave you, he blurted suddenly. That day, I didn't chain you up because I was abandoning you. I chained you to protect you. Lily's father shot Mike a skeptical look, but let him continue. I'd gotten mixed up with some dangerous people. When the police came that night, I knew they'd come after anyone connected to me, including you, Rex. I thought if they saw you chained up, they'd believe I didn't care about you anymore. Rex studied Mike's face, smelling the truth in his sweat but also detecting something sour underneath, the lingering stench of old lies. There was more to this story. Before he could process further, the car slowed near a cluster of abandoned warehouses. The stench of rotting fish and motor oil hung heavy in the air, but beneath it Rex detected something far worse, the unmistakable fear scent of trapped animals. The puppy whined, pawing at the car door. Lily's father radioed for backup as they approached the largest warehouse on foot. The rusted metal door stood slightly ajar, fresh tire tracks in the mud outside. Mike's breath hitched. This isn't right. This place was condemned years ago. A sudden chorus of barks and whimpers from inside made Rex's fur stand on end. Not just one or two dogs, dozens. The sound was muffled, as if coming from deep within the building. Lily's father drew his weapon. Stay behind me. As they slipped inside, the dim interior revealed a nightmare scene. Makeshift kennels lined the far wall, each containing at least one emaciated dog. In the center stood a rusted fighting ring stained with dark patches. But what made Rex freeze was the small office in the corner, its door decorated with a familiar symbol, the same logo that had been on his old collar. Mike paled. No, they can't still be. A sudden noise from above made them all look up. There, in the metal rafters, crouched Brutus and his pack. But they weren't alone. Beside them stood a frail brown spaniel, her muzzle gone gray with age. When she saw Rex, her tail gave a feeble wag. You came back, she whispered in dog language. Then her eyes fell on the puppy, and she let out a soft cry. You found him. They took him from his mother 2 moons ago. Before anyone could react, headlights flooded the warehouse as 2 black vans screeched to a halt outside. Doors slammed, and harsh voices shouted orders. Lily's father cursed. Backup's still 10 minutes out. We need to hide. Brutus dropped silently from the rafters, baring his teeth. We'll distract them. Get the small ones out. As the first armed men burst through the door, chaos erupted. Brutus's pack launched themselves at the intruders while Mike and Lily's father hurried to unlock kennels. Rex herded the freed dogs toward a back exit, the old spaniel limping beside him. The puppies are kept downstairs, she panted. They breed them for fighting. The puppy at Rex's feet let out a horrified whimper. Just as they reached the basement door, a gunshot rang out. Rex turned in time to see Mike collapse, clutching his leg. Standing over him was a gray-haired man in a tailored suit, the same man who used to kick Rex when he was chained up. The man smirked, leveling his gun at Mike's head. Should have stayed gone, Reynolds. From the shadows, a blur of brown fur launched itself at the man's throat. The old spaniel, moving with speed that belied her age, sank her teeth into his wrist. As the man screamed and flailed, Rex saw his chance. He charged forward, years of pent-up rage fueling his attack. This was the human who had made his life hell, who had hurt Brutus, who was still hurting innocent dogs. But just as Rex leaped, another figure intercepted him. Brutus himself, knocking Rex aside. "No," the Rottweiler growled. "If you kill him, you become what they made us." The distraction cost the spaniel dearly. The man threw her against the wall with a sickening thud. Sirens wailed in the distance as police reinforcements finally arrived. The suited man cursed and fled, leaving his men behind. Rex rushed to the spaniel's side, but her breathing was shallow. She licked his face weakly. "The keys, around my neck, the basement." As her body went still, Rex understood with terrible clarity. This was never just about his past. It was about all the dogs still suffering. The puppy nuzzled the dead spaniel's fur, then looked up at Rex with determined eyes. There were more lives to save, and this time he wouldn't be waiting for someone else to act. The basement door creaked open with an eerie groan as Rex nudged it with his nose, the cold metal of the spaniel's key still dangling from his collar. The stench that wafted up from the darkness made his stomach turn. A mixture of blood, fear, and infected wounds. Behind him, Lily's father was shouting into his radio for paramedics while applying pressure to Mike's gunshot wound. The puppy pressed close to Rex's side, trembling but determined. Brutus limped up beside them. His breathing labored from the fight. "I'll go first," the Rottweiler growled. "My eyes are adjusted to dark places." The wooden stairs groaned under their weight as they descended into the pitch-black basement. The moment Brutus's paws hit the concrete floor, a chorus of tiny whimpers erupted from the far corner. Rex's heart clenched as his eyes adjusted to reveal rows of small, filthy cages stacked haphazardly against the walls. Each contained at least 3 or 4 puppies, no older than 8 weeks, their tiny bodies covered in sores, their eyes wide with terror. The puppy beside Rex let out a distressed yelp and dashed forward, recognizing littermates in one of the cages. A sudden movement in the shadows made Rex snap to attention. A gaunt figure emerged from behind a support beam. A young woman with hollow cheeks and wild eyes clutching a baseball bat. "Stay back," she hissed, raising the weapon. Brutus immediately bared his teeth, but Rex stepped forward slowly, lowering his head in a non-threatening gesture. The woman's grip on the bat faltered as she noticed the key around Rex's neck. You're not with them?" Her voice broke as she dropped to her knees, the bat clattering to the floor. "I tried to feed them when I could, but he kept moving them to new locations." Upstairs, the sound of police boots pounding through the warehouse signaled that backup had finally arrived. The woman flinched at the noise. "They'll arrest me too," she whispered. "I'm his daughter." Rex studied her face. There was something familiar in the shape of her eyes. The same cruel slant as the suited man's, but softened with remorse. The puppy Rex had protected licked the woman's trembling fingers and she burst into tears. "I just wanted to save them, like someone should have saved you." She reached for the key around Rex's neck with shaking hands. As she began unlocking cages, Brutus positioned himself at the base of the stairs, standing guard. The puppies tumbled out in a wave of matted fur and protruding ribs, some too weak to walk properly. The woman worked frantically, her tears splashing on the concrete. "He's been doing this for 20 years, she choked out. "After the shipping yard closed, he just moved the operation underground. The police officer who used to take bribes to look the other way, that was his only setback." Rex's ears perked up. Lily's father had mentioned responding to a call at the docks 10 years ago. Was there a connection? Before he could piece it together, a new sound came from upstairs. Not police radios this time, but the unmistakable roar of a speedboat engine firing up near the warehouse's back dock. The woman's head snapped up. "He's getting away!" She lunged for the stairs, but Brutus blocked her path. "Let me through." He has documents, proof of all the officials he's paid off. If he escapes with those... A gunshot rang out from above, followed by screams and the sound of shattering glass. Rex didn't hesitate. He charged up the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into the main warehouse just in time to see the suited man diving through a broken window toward the docks. Mike, despite his injury, was dragging himself toward the same window, leaving a trail of blood behind him. "He's got my brother," Mike gasped. "My little brother's been working undercover in his organization for months." The revelation hit Rex like a thunderbolt. That night, 10 years ago, Mike hadn't been arrested for drunken violence. He'd been trying to protect someone. The pieces fell into place with startling clarity. The rushed packing, the panicked expression Mike had worn as he chained Rex up, the way he'd kept looking over his shoulder. He hadn't been abandoning Rex. He'd been trying to save him from becoming collateral damage in whatever dangerous game was unfolding. Rex reached the window just as the speedboat pulled away from the dock, the suited man laughing as he waved a thick envelope. Without thinking, Rex leaped through the broken glass, landing hard on the wooden dock below. The boat was already 20 feet out, moving fast. But then Rex noticed something bobbing in the water nearby. An old inner tube with a rope trailing behind it, likely used to tie up boats. As the police swarmed onto the dock behind him, Rex made a decision that defied all canine instinct. He grabbed the rope in his teeth and jumped into the icy water. The shock of the cold nearly made him release his grip, but the image of all those suffering puppies and the spaniel's final sacrifice kept him holding on. The current pulled him toward the speeding boat as the rope grew taut. On the dock, Lily screamed his name while her father shouted orders into his radio. Mike collapsed against the window frame, his face pale from blood loss. "That's my boy," he whispered as Rex fought the churning water. The suited man, too focused on his escape, didn't notice the German shepherd dragging himself onto the inner tube, using it as a makeshift raft as the boat pulled him further out into the river. The puppy suddenly appeared at the broken window, barking frantically. Then, to everyone's horror, he leaped through after Rex. The little dog hit the water with a splash and began paddling with all his might toward the inner tube. The suited man finally noticed the commotion and laughed cruelly. "Stupid mutts," he called, reaching for something at his waist. The glint of metal in the morning sun was all the warning Rex had before the gun fired. The puppy yelped as the bullet grazed his ear, but he kept swimming. Rex felt something awaken inside him, a protective fury stronger than any chain that had ever bound him. As the boat rounded a bend in the river, temporarily blocking the police's view, Rex saw his chance. The rope in his teeth led directly to the boat's stern. If he could just hold on a little longer. The icy river water stung Rex's wounds like 1,000 needles as the speeding boat dragged him further from shore. His jaws ached from clamping the rope, but the image of that envelope in the suited man's hands, and the puppies still trapped in the warehouse, kept. His teeth locked tight. The puppy paddled furiously toward the inner tube, his small body fighting against the current. Another gunshot rang out, this time hitting the tube with a loud pop. Air hissed out as the rubber began to deflate. Just as Rex thought he might lose his makeshift raft, an unexpected current swung the rope sideways, slamming the inner tube against the boat's hull. The impact sent shockwaves through Rex's body, but it also gave him an idea. With one mighty heave, he pulled himself up the rope until his front paws scraped against the boat's stern. The suited man, too busy steering through the narrow river bends, hadn't noticed yet. The puppy finally reached the sinking inner tube and climbed onto it, his tiny claws digging into the rubber for dear life. Rex locked eyes with him across the churning water. In that moment, he understood this brave little dog was more than just family. He was the future Rex had been waiting for all along. Mustering every ounce of strength, Rex did something he'd never attempted before. He released the rope mid-leap, launching himself onto the boat's deck with a thud that made the entire vessel shudder. The suited man whirled around, his face twisting in shock. "You!" he spat, fumbling for his gun. But Rex was faster. He lunged, not for the man's throat as instinct demanded, but for the envelope clutched in his hand. The gun went off again, the bullet whizzing past Rex's ear as his teeth closed around the precious documents. The boat swerved violently, throwing both of them off balance. Back on shore, distant shouts signaled the police had commandeered another boat, but they'd never reach them in time. The suited man regained his footing first, his polished shoe connecting with Rex's ribs in a brutal kick. The German shepherd skidded across the wet deck, the envelope still clamped in his jaws. Blood mixed with river water beneath him as his old wounds reopened. The man advanced, raising the gun again. "Should have drowned you years ago," he sneered. A sudden splash interrupted them. The puppy, impossibly, had somehow paddled close enough to leap onto the boat's side ladder. With a heroic burst of energy, the little dog launched himself at the suited man's arm just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, shattering a window instead. The man howled in pain as the puppy's teeth sank into his wrist. Rex didn't waste the opportunity. Ignoring the fire in his ribs, he scrambled to his feet and charged, this time aiming for the man's legs. The combined force of both dogs sent their tormentor crashing into the steering wheel. The boat veered sharply toward shore, its hull scraping against hidden rocks with a terrible screech. The impact threw everyone to the deck as water began gushing through a breach in the side. The suited man was first to recover. With a snarl, he grabbed the puppy by the scruff and held him over the rushing water. "Let go of those papers or the mutt gets it." Rex froze, the envelope still in his mouth. The puppy whimpered but didn't struggle, his trusting eyes locked on Rex. The German shepherd's mind raced. He couldn't attack without risking the puppy, but if he obeyed, countless dogs would suffer. Then Rex noticed something the man hadn't. The police boat was closer now, and standing at its bow was a familiar figure. Mike, pale and bandaged but very much alive, locked eyes with Rex. In that split second, Rex understood. He let the envelope drop, directly onto the boat's spinning propeller shaft. The documents exploded into a blizzard of paper, swirling around them like snow. The suited man screamed in rage, momentarily loosening his grip on the puppy. That was all Rex needed. He sprang forward, catching the little dog's collar just as the man's fingers slipped. The boat lurched again, this time throwing the suited man backward into the rapidly flooding cabin. His head struck the console with a sickening crack before he disappeared beneath the rising water. Rex barely had time to drag the puppy onto a floating seat cushion before the boat tipped vertically, its nose pointing to the sky as it began its final descent into the river depths. The last thing Rex saw before the cold water claimed them was Mike diving from the police boat, his arms outstretched toward them. The icy river water closed over Rex's head like a frozen tomb, the shock of it driving the air from his lungs. The puppy's small body was a warm weight against his chest as they tumbled through the murky darkness, spinning helplessly in the boat's churning wake. Rex's instincts screamed to swim, but his battered muscles refused to obey. Just as black spots began dancing at the edges of his vision, strong hands grabbed his scruff and hauled him upward. They broke the surface to chaos. Shouting officers, flashing lights on shore, the dying gurgle of the sinking boat. Mike clung to them with one arm while struggling to stay afloat, his bandages blooming crimson in the water. Hold on. He gasped, his face gray with pain. The puppy coughed up river water and immediately started paddling, somehow managing to help keep them all afloat. A police boat pulled alongside, officers reaching down to haul them aboard. Rex collapsed on the deck, his body shuddering with exhaustion and cold. Through half-closed eyes he watched as Mike refused treatment, instead crawling to where the last remnants of the envelope's contents lay scattered across the wet deck. "These are enough," Mike rasped, gathering a handful of soggy papers. "Bank records, shipment logs, they'll lead us to the others." Back on shore, Lily rushed forward with a thermal blanket as medics loaded Mike onto a stretcher. "We found them!" she cried, her small hands bearing in Rex's wet fur. "The basement puppies, we got them all out!" Behind her, Brutus and his pack stood guard over a cluster of carriers containing the rescued dogs. The Rottweiler met Rex's gaze and gave a solemn nod. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. As the medics worked on Mike, a detective approached with startling news. "We found your brother," he said quietly. "He's alive, but—" Mike struggled to sit up. "Where?" The detective's face darkened. "In a storage unit by the docks. He'd been questioning their accountant when things went bad." Rex's ears perked up at the word accountant, the missing piece. If they could find the money trail, the entire operation would collapse. The puppy suddenly stiffened, his nose twitching wildly. Before anyone could react, he darted between the officer's legs and took off down the pier. Rex gave chase, his body protesting every step. The little dog led him to a storm drain, where a faint whining sound echoed from below. Rex's heart stopped when he recognized the scent. More puppies, recently hidden. Mike arrived with officers and crowbars. As they pried open the grate, Rex realized with dawning horror why the suited man had risked coming back to the warehouse. These weren't just any puppies. Their distinctive white paws marked them as descendants of champion fighting dogs. The man had been trying to save his breeding stock. The last puppy pulled from the drain was different. Smaller, with one blue eye and a familiar brown splotch on its chest. The detective gasped. That's the same markings as the undercover officer's childhood dog." Rex and Mike exchanged a look. This was no coincidence. The brother had planted his own message. As the sun set over the river, Rex sat beside Mike's stretcher, watching the rescued dogs being loaded into ambulances. The puppy curled up between them, exhausted but victorious. Lily stroked Rex's head. "You did it," she whispered. But Rex knew better. The suited man's body hadn't been found. The money was still hidden, and somewhere out there, other dogs still suffered. A shadow moved near the tree line. Brutus was leaving, his pack following silently into the darkness. The Rottweiler paused just once to look back at Rex. The unspoken message was clear. Some battles required teeth, not leashes. Rex lowered his head in understanding. His decade-long vigil was over, but a new journey was about to begin. The veterinary hospital buzzed with activity as vets tended to the rescued puppies, their soft whimpers mixing with the beeping of medical equipment. Rex lay on a padded mat near Mike's wheelchair, his bandaged leg throbbing dully while the puppy slept curled against his side. The marked puppy with the blue eye rested in Lily's lap, her small fingers gently working out the tangles in its fur. A television mounted high on the wall played silent news footage of the warehouse raid, flashing images of officers carrying out filing cabinets and hard drives. Mike leaned forward with a wince, studying the unusual puppy. "That marking isn't natural," he murmured, rubbing the brown splotch with his thumb. As if on cue, the dye began to smudge, revealing numbers tattooed on the puppy's skin beneath. Lily gasped. "It's a bank account number." Rex's ears perked up. This was Mike's brother's final message, hidden in the one place no dogfighter would think to look. Before they could react, the hospital doors burst open. A frantic officer rushed in, his uniform splattered with mud. "We found him," the suited man, "but he's not alone." His eyes darted to Rex. "He's got a van full of dogs headed for the state border. Says he'll release them unharmed if we hand over the marked puppy." The room fell silent. Mike's jaw tightened. It's a trap. That puppy is the key to bringing down his entire network. The puppy at Rex's side suddenly woke with a start, his nose twitching wildly. He scrambled to the window, scratching at the glass. Outside in the parking lot, a shadow moved between cars. Brutus and two of his pack members, their eyes glowing in the dim light. The Rottweiler carried something in his jaws, dropping it beneath the window before melting back into darkness. Mike wheeled himself outside to retrieve the item, a waterlogged ledger wrapped in plastic. The pages contained detailed records of shipments, payments, and most chillingly, a list of retired fighting dogs with locations. Rex recognized his own name next to the shipping yard address, along with a shocking notation. Subject 37, behavioral anomaly, failed to attack even when starved. Potential genetic mutation. A cold realization settled over Rex. He hadn't been randomly selected for that chain 10 years ago. He'd been part of an experiment. The puppy nudged his paw as if sensing his distress. Lily hugged the marked puppy closer. "We can't let him win," she whispered. Mike nodded grimly, flipping to the last page where a single address was circled repeatedly, an old farmhouse just across the state line. The detective's radio crackled to life. "All units be advised. Suspect's vehicle has been spotted taking Highway 14 toward Riverside." Mike's head snapped up. "That's a diversion. The real meeting place is the farmhouse." He looked down at Rex, something unspoken passing between them. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about every dog who'd suffered at these hands. Rex stood slowly, testing his injured leg. The puppy immediately mirrored him, standing tall despite his trembling limbs. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she understood. "You're going after him, aren't you?" Mike reached for Rex's head, running his fingers through the fur behind his ears like he used to a lifetime ago. "Bring him home, boy," he whispered. As Rex and the puppy moved toward the door, the other rescued dogs began stirring in their cages. One by one, they sat up and watched the pair pass with quiet intensity. The marked puppy wriggled from Lily's arms and trotted after them, its blue eye gleaming with determination. Outside, Brutus emerged from the shadows, his pack forming a loose circle around them. The Rottweiler dropped a blood-stained collar at Rex's feet, the suited man's scent still fresh on the leather. The message was clear. The hunt was on. Rex took a deep breath of the night air, his senses sharpening. For 10 years he'd waited. Now he would run. The cold night air bit at Rex's wet fur as he led the strange procession down back roads and wooded trails, following the scent trail Brutus had helped them pick up. The marked puppy trotted beside him, its blue eye reflecting moonlight like a beacon, while the little dog who'd started this journey with him scouted ahead. Behind them moved Brutus and his pack, no longer feral strays but disciplined hunters moving with a single-minded purpose. The farmhouse appeared suddenly through the trees, its darkened windows belying the activity inside. Parked behind it was the suited man's van, its back doors slightly ajar. The whimpering coming from inside made Rex's hackles rise. Brutus melted into the shadows to flank the building, while Rex and the puppies approached the front porch. Every step sent pain shooting through his injured leg, but the memory of all those years spent waiting, all the dogs still suffering, pushed him forward. As his paw touched the first wooden step, the front door creaked open. The suited man stood silhouetted in the doorway, his expensive clothes rumpled, his hair wild. In one hand he held a syringe, in the other a leash connected to a terrified young Doberman. "I knew you'd come," he sneered. "The famous loyal German shepherd." His eyes fell on the marked puppy and gleamed with greed. "Give me that dog, and I'll let the others go." Rex didn't move. The little dog beside him growled low in his throat. The suited man laughed harshly and raised the syringe. "This is enough to drop a horse. One step closer, and I use it." A sudden crash came from the back of the house, Brutus and his pack breaking through a window. In that split second of distraction, Rex lunged. Not at the man, but at the leash in his hand. His teeth severed the leather strap, freeing the Doberman, who immediately turned on his captor. The suited man stumbled back, the syringe falling from his grasp as the marked puppy darted between his legs, tripping him. Chaos erupted. Dogs poured from the van, some attacking the suited man's legs, others racing to help Brutus's pack subdue his accomplices inside. Rex made straight for the farmhouse basement. He could smell the fear coming from below. The door was padlocked, but years of chewing through chains had given Rex the strongest jaws in the city. The metal gave way with a screech. Below, in makeshift kennels, sat the final piece of the puzzle. Mike's brother, bruised but alive, tending to a group of elderly fighting dogs too injured to sell. The man looked up, his eyes widening at the sight of Rex. "You," he whispered, then smiled wearily. "Mike always said you'd be the one to end this." Dawn was breaking by the time police vehicles surrounded the farmhouse. The suited man sat handcuffed in a squad car, his empire of cruelty finally crumbling. Mike arrived in an ambulance, his face pale but determined as officers helped his brother upstairs. Lily ran to Rex, throwing her arms around his neck. "You did it!" she cried. But Rex's eyes were on the horizon, where Brutus and his pack stood watching from the tree line. The Rottweiler met Rex's gaze one last time, then turned and disappeared into the woods. Some dogs weren't meant for leashes or fences. Rex understood now. His long vigil hadn't been about waiting for the past to return. It had been about preparing him for this moment, this purpose. As the rescued dogs were loaded into ambulances, the marked puppy curled up at Rex's feet. Lily's parents spoke quietly with Mike, their words floating on the morning air. "We'd like to adopt them all," the father said. Mike smiled, looking at Rex. "I think they've already adopted us." Moral lesson: true loyalty isn't about waiting endlessly for what was lost. It's about having the courage to protect what remains. Sometimes our greatest purpose finds us in ways we never expected, and family isn't always defined by blood, but by who stands beside us in our darkest moments. Like Rex, we may face years of hardship, but every scar can become a testament to our strength, and every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change the world for someone else.